Joining us today. Once again, our policy at the Chai Academy is that each class is independent of the other. In other words, one does not have to listen to a previous class in order to understand this one. Having said that, we're going to springboard from the previous class, and the title of this class and the previous class is essentially, it's all about Jewish ethics and beliefs, and we're talking about honoring and respecting one's parents. Notice it doesn't say loving. It doesn't say loving. It only says honoring and respecting. And we discussed briefly last time that it's two separate things, honoring and respecting. That honor is to feed them, to clothe them, to take them to the doctor, to call them once in a while. Especially the Jewish mother, you don't call her. It's brutal. Honoring and calling and writing and and visiting and remembering the birthdays and etc. etc. All that comes under the banner of honoring. Respecting is different. Respecting is that you don't sit in their favorite place at the kitchen table or the dining room table or the den. You that's their designated spot. That's dad's spot. That's mom's spot. And while they're alive, you're not allowed to sit in their spot. You can if you ask them permission. Then you are allowed to sit in this spot. Also, is that you cannot disagree with them, and there's a public argument going on. You cannot take someone else's side. You either be quiet. Privately, you can talk respectfully, no problem. But you don't take someone else's side, and you just either quiet or you take your parents' side. But we're not talking about interfamily stuff. We're talking about politics, right? How the politics are brutal, and it would behoove a child to just be quiet. Now, so as I said earlier, this is true of when a parent is alive. When a parent passes, one can sit in their table, at the seat at the table, at the den, in the bedroom, in the living room, etc., etc. And in fact, one is encouraged to emulate them, take their strong points, take their characteristics, their morals, their values, what they stood for, and emulate them and be like them. So while you're not allowed to step into their shoes when they're alive, you should step in their shoes, metaphorically, once they pass. That's all honor and that's all respect. However, love, it doesn't say love, and as we discussed, loving somebody you have a lifelong relationship with, a parent, and it's not a parallel relationship. It's not a spouse. It's not a lover. It's not a right. It is very difficult for the Torah to command that love. And there are times also where a parent cannot be loved. An abusive parent, you can't love him. Even though an abusive parent, you still have to have all of them. In other words, you're not allowed to slap them in public. You can go to the cops for sure. But love is the Torah did not command love for this type of relationship, a serial relationship, because it's not practical. And as we discussed, that if a parent is abusive, you're not obligated to call them often or visit often. If they're abusive and they damage you, then you're not obligated to be damaged. Judaism, we do not teach turn the other cheek. We do not teach that. What we do teach is, you smack me once, that's enough. That's enough. I'm not going to allow you to smack me again. That's the premise of Judaism. So therefore, if you have an abusive parent, do not turn the other cheek, and you're not commanded to love an abusive parent. You are commanded to honor, and you are commanded to respect a parent at all times. Unless it's damaging to you, then stay away. Now, that was pretty much the class of last week, but the previous class. But this class, I want to focus on how much control does a parent have over a child? Can they dictate what they become, what their profession is? Can they dictate whom they marry? Can a parent dictate what level of religious observance one should be, where it's enough, or you haven't gone far enough, or you've gotten too far, you're out of whack, you're a fanatic, you're an extremist? Can a parent dictate a moral conscience? Can they? So it's interesting. In one of the verses that we discussed awe of parents, right? In the Decalogue, in the Ten Commandments, it says kabed, honor. But there's another verse in Leviticus that says that ish imay v'aviv tiro, a person should have awe of their parents. Be'es shabsesai tishmeru. In the same verse, not even the next verse. And you should safeguard my Sabbath. The sages learn from here that if a parent tells a child to do something that is not consistent with Torah, morality, moral code, or a family code, or a community code, then the child is not obligated to follow. Just not obligated to follow. Because, yes, you should honor your parents, but, buddy, shabsesai tishmeru, you have to safeguard the Sabbath. Right? So, if a parent tells a child to do something immoral, the child has the right to say, absolutely not. If a parent wants a child to date this person, the child has the right to say no, because whom you marry is a moral decision, right? It's not only that she's hot, he's a hunk. It's a moral decision as well. Does this person share my moral views? Do they are we compatible in that way? So a parent cannot tell you who to date. A parent cannot tell you who to marry. Now, I know that this is going to be, every child who will see this, I don't know how many, will show it to their parents. You can't tell me who to go out with, Mom, and just because you know somebody, Mrs. Conifiora's daughter, I'm not going out with her. And they're right. However, your mom only wants your best. So, yeah, you can. And you may have heard of this concept called arranged marriages. So it's wrong. Yes, many times they work out. And in the olden times, things were much easier. Everybody lived in a shtetl. You lived in, is by 4 streets by 4 streets. Everybody knew each other. And Shlomi and Esty come from good homes, and they share exactly the same thing. They look alike even, because there's everybody in this community is really one big happy family. So So it used to work. Nowadays, the world is much bigger. We don't live in a shtetl. There's something to be said, by the way, about living in a shtetl where it's very easy to be kosher, very easy to go to a class, very easy to pray with a quorum, very easy to get kosher food, very easy to send your kids to Jewish school. There's something to be said about a shtetl mentality, a ghetto mentality, but it's not practical. We don't. So therefore, blind marriages is something that this day and age, with the exception of very few, should not happen. Just should not happen. There is in the Orthodox circles, they have blind dates. That they have. I myself, I was set up on a blind date. I hadn't met this girl in a bar or a party or a wedding, or my sister set us up, and we dated. If it was, we enjoyed date 1, we go to date 2. We enjoy date 2, we go to date 3. You win some, you lose some. But the bottom line is the decision is always in the child's hand, the adult child's hands. And so it's a blind date, but after the first date, it's no longer a blind date if you wish to continue. Right? So that is fine. A blind marriage is really a tough road to hoe. I mean, it's really not advisable. And it's for the same reason, by the way, is that you cannot coerce, according to the Torah, you cannot coerce your child to marry. And the Torah says that if a child says, I do not want to marry, and the parents say, well, you have to marry, you gave your commitment, and the bottom line is that the person has the right to say no. And because of that, it's very difficult, according to Torah, for a parent to marry off their child when she's a minor. We live in the United States, it's foreign to us, but if we lived in Afghanistan, or if we lived in, and if you're a Jew living in Afghanistan, where the culture is you do marry off your child, inconceivable to us and unacceptable to us, the Torah would say, no, you can't, right? Because it doesn't, that's considered coercion, and you cannot, right? So, to sum up, a parent cannot dictate who we marry, a parent cannot dictate who we date, a parent cannot dictate and tell us to stray from our moral conviction. A parent cannot say, oh, come on, give up kosher. It's nonsense. I demand you give up kosher. It's unfair for a parent to give that demand. A, that's just controlling. B, the child does not have to listen biblically. There is no reason for that child to listen, and once again, the juxtaposition that it's in the same verse, a mother and his father you shall fear, and in the same verse, right next to it, safeguard my Sabbath. So we learn that parents have absolutely no control. So we know, for example, that there are many parents of children who become the parents are not religious, and the children become religious. Many parents struggle with it. Because in their eyes it's loony toony, and because it's different from them. And the reason why parents struggle is because they almost feel like rejected, that we brought you up a certain way, and what you've done is you've turned your back on your upbringing. However, to the parents, I say, you brought up your child in a certain way, and kudos to you that your child embraced something beautiful. Now, if your child embraces something that's not beautiful, your child joins ISIS, that's definitely a rejection of your morals and values and the way they were brought up, right? Admittedly. But if your child decides to keep kosher, as an example, it doesn't hurt anybody because it can be worked out, and they're trying to stay true to their soul. So you should be applauded, and your children should be applauded that you fostered an attitude of spirituality in your child. So we just have to correct the outlook. Now, in my opinion, if a parent of religious family and their child becomes irreligious, while it's true they can be disappointed, however, they are still your child. And you have to have unconditional love for your child. You have to love them. A child doesn't need an actor to guide him or her. A child doesn't need a coach. A child doesn't need a basketball star. What a child needs is a parent. And it doesn't matter how old the child is. If parents and children, even as adults, if they have this relationship, there's nothing better. So if your child disappoints you, we're not talking about your child as a murderer or a rapist, but if your child disappoints you, and your child does something that's not becoming of the upbringing, once again, if they do something nice, you should applaud them. If they keep kosher, or they become a little bit more aware of their faith, of God, etc., it's not a bad thing, right? But if it's something negative, and by all accounts it's negative, then you still gotta love them. You still gotta love them. Your parents, but you always have to be there for them. This nonsense that you hear of parents, I haven't heard it lately, but I have heard it where a child intermarries and a parent leaves their child for dead. They sit shiva and they say, this child is lost to me. And to me, that the parent who does that is a bulvan, just an ox. I understand the pain. I'm empathetic here. I can be empathetic also. Sympathetic as well. But you're still their parent. And for you to turn your back, and God forbid, while your child's alive, to say that you're going to sit shiva, it is off. It is off, to say the least. Because you're obligated as a parent to love your child, and to be there for your child, and to always try and guide and mentor your child. So they didn't listen to your advice here, but there's thousands of other things where they may need you. Always keep the relationship open. Always keep the relationship loving. Right? This is and once again, it's we go back to that verse. Yeah, the parents you should tira'u, parents you should fear, and you should have all of your parents, and in the same verse. So they're not mutually exclusive. Oh, you gave up on God, I give up on you. No, you're still the parent. You're still the parent, and we never ever give up. We lick our wounds, and we move on. Very important, incredibly important. Is there a parent that a child is obligated to listen to more? So it's interesting, because in the Decalogue it says, honor your father and then mother. So it's father precedes mother. However, in Leviticus, the mother comes first. So the reason why it is such is to teach us that both parents are equal in one's life. One cannot say, well, in the Decalogue it says father. No, because in Leviticus it says mother, right? And it reminds me of the joke about a mother who knitted 2 sweaters for their child, and the child went to visit them and put on one of the sweaters they knitted, and the mother said, what's the matter, you didn't like the other one? So the Torah had to say one first, right? had to say one first. And therefore, it said one first. And the other time, it said the other one first. So there's no parent really who has a hierarchy as to whom you need to serve. It is whichever parent you can get to, whatever parent that needs you at that time, that's where you go. And both parents need you at the same time. You explain yourself, and you do what you need to do. So that's why one place, and it's interesting, one place it says, honor your father, because generally speaking, you've ever heard of the term, wait till your father gets home. The Torah doesn't have to talk about awe. The father is usually not only, and in some cases not at all, the disciplinarian. But in many times, especially this day and age, it's not true. But so therefore it says honor, because we know you're going to honor your mom. Mom, you're tied, in the umbilical tube is tied. However, when it comes to awe, it says honor your mother, because you may not have awe of your mother for whatever reason. So the Torah tells you, I'm obligating you to have awe and reverence for her. And it's just not just your dad. In a patriarchal society, right? In the king and the queen. So the king was the king, and the queen had, back in the day had less power unless she was the queen without the king. So here the Torah says they're both equal. They're absolutely both equal. So one has to treat their parents. One has to treat their parents with equal respect and equal honor. If there are any questions, now's the time to ask. That the Torah does say in the Decalogue, very unusual, because the Torah never ever gives a reward for one's good deeds. But here, if you look in the Decalogue, you look in the Ten Commandments, it says, honor your father and mother. L'ma'an yarichon yumecha, in order that you live a long life. So, if we are to read it literally, it's a reward that you will have a long life, right? That you're blessed. It's a talisman for long life. Right? And amen. So may it be God's will. It's also teaching us that if children do not honor their parents, they do not honor their father and mother, society will break down. If a child does not respect one's parents at home, chances are a child will not respect a teacher at school. If a child does not honor and respect and have reverence for a parent, they're not going to have honor and respect and reverence for a police officer, for a judge. And so when you look at the Ten Commandments, it makes sense. Honor your father and mother in order you have a long life. It starts here. And I always tell parents, I always tell them the same thing. I always tell parents that you demand honor, which means you're not lovey-dovey. They're not your friend. They're not your sibling. They're your child. And therefore, once in a while, you don't have to, they're not your indentured servants, but once in a while, you put your foot down and say, don't talk to your mother like that. You step up and say, this is unacceptable. She is your mother. Or, could you please get me a drink from the fridge? That's fine. That's fine. It teaches them honor. And you're not the same generation. You're a parent, etc., etc. So the best way to have society is where they're taught to honor and respect parents, and parents undermine the very fabric of society when a teacher calls up the parents and the parents poo-poo the teacher, or the parents are rude to the teacher. And we just had it last week. We just had it last week as an example, where I believe this was in Michigan, where a child wrote things about killing everybody in school, and brought to the attention of the principal. The principal called the parents. The parents texted the child and said, "Hide your emotions, darling. Try and hide them better. LOL." That's not having respect for the principal. The principal calls you. You have a conversation with your child, not a text. You come to the principal's office and work it out. If you do that, society can continue. You don't do that, you're going to end up with havoc, where cops are beaten up, and judges are yelled at, and teachers are not listened to, etc. It starts at home. Kabed es avicha v'es imecha. The last thing we want is a breakdown of society, and unfortunately, there's been a decline, but it's not too late to stop it. If you wish to rehear this class, you can always go to thechaicenter.com/academy. We're on Spotify, we're on YouTube, and please feel free to share. Be well.